Good evening, YouTube. It is 9 p.m. in the great state of Texas, and we're building another table because that has pretty much been the theme for the entirety of the month, is just table building. So if you guys have seen me make one table, you've pretty much have seen me make them all. So this will be nothing new, nothing special. But first things first, you got to go down to Lowe's and you got to pick up the best boards humanly possible, which is impossible to do because Lowe's, in spite of going to the craft area and says craft project wood, you got to dig through the entirety of the entire stack of wood to find the straightest boards. So we got 5 straight boards. It's cooling down here in Texas a little bit, 61 degrees. Got to bust out the planer. We got to get all those staples out, and we're just going to plane them through as best as possible, and then later take them through the joiner and try to get all these glued up. But that's probably the most difficult part about the entirety of the project, is just trying to find wood that is not warped, that is usable. That's got to be one of my biggest pet peeves, because when you're an amateur woodworker and you're just trying to, make tables or trying to make something that looks like a table, you got to get good wood. And the problem is the wood at Lowe's is not the greatest. And I would love to be on the level of, hey, I'm going to buy a nice piece of walnut and make something cool out of it. However, I don't have thousands of dollars to spend on that. So this is kind of like the next best thing. And yes, I know my planer is totally messed up and that the shavings should not come out the front like that. And I have taken this thing apart. I've done everything there is to do. However, I can't figure out why it does that. And I've gone through all the comments concerning that, and right now it's working for what it needs to do, so I'm just going to keep on using it until it just completely fails. But getting all the wood taken through the planer, getting everything nice, level, and even as humanly possible, just trying to get the boards to be usable. So a little bit later, I didn't use the joiner for this one. I did and didn't film it. I can't remember, honestly. I had 4 of these tables going at the same time, but doing the glue up here, just getting everything nice and even and just doing the glue up essentially. And no, I'm not selling those brushes, by the way. I made a YouTube short a couple of weeks back, and somebody made a comment about peddling these brushes that you can get at Lowe's for a couple of bucks. But hey, it works great. So getting everything glued up here and just using our regular Gorilla wood glue and smearing that all over, and bam, just getting that glued up into the actual clamps themselves, and going to give this about 48 hours to kind of set up. It really doesn't take that long. Probably, don't even have to do it for 48 hours. But coming back, taking all the weights off, and if you're curious of why you put the weights on there, because the wood warps and it's uneven, and in spite of how well that you might align things, sometimes they just don't work, and you got to put weights to kind of balance everything out a little bit. So getting that all taken care of, got to get the table so that we can put the board on there, and we're going to start planing it. And here I am struggling with my mobile table here, getting that set up, and boom, looks pretty good. You can't really see the details, but this is probably the most hilarious part of this entire project, is me trying to hand plane. And I picked up a hand plane, and I am not good at hand planing. I can't figure this thing out. I went to YouTube University, tried to actually figure out what I was doing wrong, and I think the blades are kind of unsharpened, so I ordered a sharpener. Anyway, I took my mini hand plane and basically did all the work with it. So once we got everything kind of nice, kind of even, got to flip it over, and we got to do the same thing all over again. So end up doing that for the remainder. And then once I got that done, coming over and taking my rasp and making the edges even, which this is actually pretty fun. I actually like doing this. I usually take the sander and do it, but this seemed to work out just as well. And I haven't used the rasp in quite a bit, but just using that to file everything down on the edges to make everything as even as humanly possible. So this is another part where I completely screwed up, trying to fill these small little gaps because I did not use the joiner correctly, or I can't remember using the joiner to even begin with. So I'm making a little reservoir with some hot glue, and I've seen people do this and trying to fill these small little gaps as best as humanly possible, and going to try to fill some epoxy in there, because the person that I'm building this table for likes black epoxy. So here I am, mixed up some epoxy and trying to fill all these little cracks to make it cool and make it a little bit more presentable, make it fancier, I guess is the best way to put it. but my reservoir did not work for shit. And all of this completely went through the bottom of it. And I kept on trying to add hot glue. I added some silicone mats to it. And man, this is what it looked like. It's just hot garbage. Yeah, it did not work out well. So decided to just make some, table putty and come back, fill those gaps, and just, go about the table build. So here I am trying to sand everything. And this is probably my most favorite part, which is sanding, because everybody knows in woodworking, sanding is the best thing ever. It's really not. It's mostly just a lot of work, but you got to do it if you want your table to look somewhat presentable. So spent a lot of time on, I think it was at 80 grit on both sides, and man, this part took forever because that epoxy that's at the head of the table there, that's going to take forever to kind of grind out. But getting the sander, mixing everything, just getting everything nice, level, trying to make it presentable, trying to salvage just the ugliness that was that epoxy pour. It just did not come out the way that I wanted. But here I am at so this is probably my favorite part of the table build here, is just routing the edges, because this actually kind of, makes it a little bit more fancy, getting the edges nice and rounded. I think that adds a lot of character to the table. And that took, no effort at all. Went really smooth. Did it on the opposite side of the table as well. And now we're just going to pre-stain the table, because this is just regular pine craft wood that you get at Lowe's, and you gotta make it a little bit more fancy. So here we are, just using our pre-stain here just to get everything nice, coated and even. And then on the bottom of it, I didn't stain the table. I thought it'd be cool just to use a torch, so I just burnt the bottom of it. I think that's fine. Nobody's going to really see the bottom. So then we start the staining portion here, trying to make things a little fancier and just getting that nice and even everywhere. Yes, I'm using just a regular towel rag that you pick up at Lowe's, and it works fine. So the comments will be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're using that. It works perfectly fine. Here's the table a little bit later, and here I am applying polyacrylic with a foam brush, which apparently, according to YouTube Woodworking, is against the law, but it works, and the table is going to turn out fine. So bam, you can do that all day long. And the person that I built this for wanted the longest table legs humanly possible. And these things are ginormous. So getting them out, you can just see, I think they're like 36-inch table legs, or like 32-inch, somewhere around there. But flipping the table over, gonna drill the guide pilot holes here, and they're so tall you can't even see the tops of them. But just doing our standard thing where we just drill those in, some hot glue, and we're nearly done with the project. But man, these table legs are super tall. But they go in pretty smooth. We've done this a ton of times, so it really doesn't take any kind of real effort. You just drill those pilot holes in, put the table legs in there, add a little bit of a glue and epoxy, and then we're good to go. You just do that all around the table. But the bottom looks good. I'm actually working on another tabletop where we're just going to do the burning of the top of the table. But here we are, putting our glue in. And not everybody has to put glue in. People say, oh, you shouldn't do that. Whatever. I'm going to do what I want. But, getting everything drilled in nice and even, just do that all around the table. And then boom, boom, good to go pretty much. But another little fun project. I got to get better. I think the more tables that I build, the better off I'm going to get as far as like using the router and planing everything. It's just when you have to start off with wood that's already kind of crooked, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But we're getting better at these tables, so that's always fun. And here's the finished project right here. Really tall, but looks cool. I think it looks fine. I mean, it started off as just Lowe's lumber, and we try to make it into something, and I think it looks good. So anyway, hope you liked it. Hope you got something out of it, and I'll check you out in the next one. All right, peace.